Extraordinary scenes. A city, a country where dissent is not tolerated. People can even be thrown in jail for holding up a placard without any writing on it. We saw thousands of supporters of Alexei Navalny mourning him in Moscow. It was his funeral, and they came out in force. And they were people of all ages, and they started chanting Navalny's name, a name, of course, that Putin refuses to even mention. He won't even speak of him. They started to chant other things like no war. Putin is a murderer. Russia will be free. There was one moment where people were chanting, "You were not afraid," referring to Alexei Navalny. "We are not afraid." So there were very, very powerful scenes outside the church. Of course, a lot of people couldn't get in. It was restricted very much to family and close friends. There was restrictions on filming, though there seemed to be some filming going on there, and we've seen a bit of that on the wires now. And seeing an open casket of Alexei Navalny, his mother and father, quite close. And apparently that got shut down quite early. And then we saw a whole lot of people marching down the street to the cemetery where they wanted to pay their final respects to the man who was the greatest threat to Vladimir Putin, that opposition leader that they had to jail, who of course died 2 weeks ago.
Have there been any reports of any mourners being detained, not just there but around the country?
Yeah, there's a human rights group in Russia called OVD Info, and they monitor arrests, political arrests. And the latest count I saw from them was that they said that 90 people had been detained, I think, across 18 or 19 cities. So that was a bit of a surprise, I would have to say, that it was that low. So that's what we're hearing so far. But of course, Kath, they can take the CCTV vision and go and hunt down these people later. And we've heard previously that people who may have turned up at certain protests, that they've been tracked down and then they've lost their jobs. So just because there's only 90 at this stage doesn't mean there won't be further people detained and arrested at a later date.
We of course saw a lot of that going on when the passing of Alexei Navalny was announced over a week ago. Tell me, Steve, is Australia's ambassador in attendance?
He was. John Geering was there. A number of Western diplomats turned up. They tried to get into the church, but they weren't allowed in. The authorities would not let them in. But they did lay flowers at the cemetery where Alexei Navalny was put to rest today in Moscow. And John Geering released a statement, the Australian ambassador to Moscow. He said he was profoundly impacted and moved by the depth of grief shown by many thousands today at the funeral of Alexei Navalny. He said those remembering his legacy at the funeral carry on his hopes for a better Russia. Australia and the world shares your grief and your hopes. So quite strong messages from Western diplomats that they very much saw Alexei Navalny as a shining light, not only for democratic values, but for anti-corruption values as well. That was of course, a big part of his crusade and the subject to many of those YouTube videos that he put together. So some strong messages of support from Western diplomats by turning up in the first place and issuing those kind of statements about Alexei Navalny and their hopes for a more democratic Russia.